I have a very stable job, and a good one at that. But sometimes you need a little extra money, right? I'm currently moving into a newer, bigger, and nicer apartment. So I've been putting down some payments and using money to move. By no means am I broke, but it's nice to earn some extra cash. I thought of selling some clothes that I never wear. I've already donated a lot of the older ones to the Salvation Army. But for the clothes I never wore and that are worth some good cash, I decided to sell over Craigslist and LetGo app. LetGo app has never failed me. Craigslist, well, I've never tried it before, but my friends have had some great experiences. I was trying to sell a very cute, short-sleeve black and white flower dress for $12. I put my number down so I could just talk to people directly, since I don't use my email too often. Side note, I posted a picture of me in the dress that my friend took, not showing my face, and with a blank white wall background behind me. I got a text a couple hours later after I posted the dress. And here's how that conversation went. Hey, I saw your dress on sale. Is it still available? Yes, it is. It's kind of hard to see the dress in the picture you have posted. Do you have any more pictures of you in the dress? I've sent a picture of the dress on a hanger. One picture close up for detail, and one to see the full dress. I asked for pictures with it on. I'll just look at the ad tomorrow. I never responded back. It was very alarming to have someone talk to me like that. And why would someone want to see the dress on? I mean, I guess I understand, but really? 2 days later, I got a weird phone call at 7 a.m. By the way, this was my day off, and I usually keep my ringer on because I'm always on call. I glanced at my phone's display, only to see that it wasn't work, and it was a unknown caller. I was kind of pissed, so I let it ring. They call again right after. I sighed and cleared my throat to answer.
Hello? Yes, hello. Are you the one selling the dress? Yes, I am. I'm calling for my wife. I have some questions.
In my head, I'm like, what? But I just go along with it.
My name is Mark. And yours?
I gave him my name, but he fails many times, and it almost made me think, dude, am I being prank called? It was pretty frustrating, because I told him many times, and spelt my name about 20 times. We get over the introductions, and he gets into the questioning.
Is it a fake dress? Yes, it is. Can this be worn as a fancy dinner dress? It can be. You can dress it casual or dressed up. Okay, now, how tall are you? I'm 5'3". Okay. My wife's pretty short, and around your same height. Do you wear a bra with the dress? She can wear it with or without.
Mark continues to push if I've ever worn a bra with the dress, and I get short with my answers.
Where are you right now? I feel like I'm woken you up.
I decided to lie to cover myself.
Yes, I'm at a friend's currently. Girlfriend's? A friend's. I'm just not home, okay? But did you sleep in the same bed as her? Can we move on? I'm not at home right now.
His phone cut out. Calls back a minute later.
Sorry, my phone died, so anyways. What size cup are you? Excuse me?
Definitely don't feel comfortable answering this.
Are you a B or C? I'm not answering this. You look very big-breasted, very gifted. My wife hasn't asked. Do you? I do not want to answer this. You're making me very uncomfortable. I'm gonna hang up. But does the dress right up your back? When you walk, does it show your ass?
I hung up. He decided to call me over and over. It's not like I can block his number because his number was unknown. On the 20th call, I answered to tell him off.
Listen, I don't feel like You know, I know where you live. And I want that dress.
I hung up and cried. I didn't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I would understand if a guy wants a dress for his own pleasure, sexual or not. but at least tell me and not act like his wife needs one. Does he even have a wife? Why couldn't she call me herself? I don't know. I have so many questions. I'm legit scared. This number won't stop calling me. Even got an email that's not related to this about a guy named Mr. Anonymous, asking for smelly old flats. Is this normal for Craigslist? And more importantly, to the man who keeps calling me about that dress, please, let's not meet. Sorry, but be prepared for a fairly long story. Here goes. I was living in Hawaii and had to move to LA for work. Didn't know anyone and was fairly broke, and my job wasn't going to help with the moving expenses. So I had to resort to scouring Craigslist for a room to rent. After literally thousands of scams or weirdos, I finally find this amazing girl. She was funny, we had similar interests, and she even worked in the same field as me. She didn't have a place yet, but her and another girl were looking at several houses that required a third roommate. They were totally okay with doing all the work, seeing as how I was an ocean away. She called or Skyped with me about once a week, and sent me pictures of each house they looked at. All in all, she was pretty incredible. Fast forward 3 months. They found a huge and gorgeous house. Everything was settled. The 2 girls, Evan and Juliana, were moved in. And Evan, the original girl from the Craigslist, picked me and all of my stuff up at the airport. On the ride home, she starts telling me horror stories about her past roommates. Every single one had fucked her over in some horrendous way. And she was terrified of being close to people after that. She said she wanted us to be the people who turned that around for her. And she wanted us to be like a little family. Instead of going directly to the house, we went to a nearby Starbucks, where she chain smoked and told me about her stepdad who was in AA, and how she'd briefly been attending NA meetings after a short bout with a painkiller addiction. She decided she wasn't a drug addict and didn't need it. Then, she admits that she's only known the other roommate for a month and a half. Red flags are starting to pop up all over the place. Why would an LA native need to find strangers to live with her on Craigslist? Why the oversharing about drugs in her family? Why had she never had a positive roommate experience? Pushed it all aside, giving this girl the benefit of the doubt. A few weeks go by in the house and all's well. I forget she ever seemed off and we start becoming closer and closer. She then takes me on a tour of LA for a day and proceeds to tell me her entire disturbing life story. When I say we gotten close, by no means were we close enough to make this appropriate. She tells me about her stepfather molesting her, getting sent to a mental hospital when she told on him because he's a doctor and she said she was criminally insane, then getting raped by a lesbian at the hospital and beaten by the guards, then attempting suicide, as well as her mother's severe narcotic addiction, her then ex-fiancé having a psychotic break and trying to kill her, her struggles with chronic kidney illness that required many surgeries, her recent long-term boyfriend disappearing under mysterious circumstances. The horrific stories just went on and on and on. It sounded like something from a movie, and part of me questioned if it could all be possibly true. But again, I was giving her the benefit of the doubt. Things go fine for a while, and my doubts about her subside. And my food starts disappearing. I ask both girls about it privately, and Evan claims that the other girl, Juliana, had confessed to her that she was a compulsive overeater. Naturally, Juliana claims to be innocent. I side with Evan, and we start mildly bullying Juliana to try to get her to admit that she was stealing the food. And dishes start piling up at the sink, and nobody is washing them except me. I ask both girls, and again, Evan swears on her life that it's Jules. Finally, Jules has had enough. It turns out she's been eating out every meal. We all had very different schedules, and Evan lied to my face about the dishes and food. When confronted, Evan starts crying and saying, "How could you accuse me of such things? I'm a good person. I'm a good person." We ended up apologizing to her in the end. Finally, tension builds between the two girls due to many repeats of this situation. And one night, when I'm at work and they start fighting, Evan calls me saying that Juliana hit her and she's afraid for her life. I call Jules and tell her to find a new place to live. Juliana goes to stay with friends, and within a week she moves out. Now this is where things get really weird. Evan moves out of the master bedroom and starts sleeping in the living room every single night. After I repeatedly request that she return to living in her own bedroom, she tearfully confesses that she's been on high-dose opiates this whole time. She's trying to wean herself off, but it makes her too weak to walk downstairs. Feeling sorry for her, I end up babysitting her for a few weeks while she withdraws. It was both terrifying and disgusting. I really wanted to help her out. During this time, I see her naked and realize that she has no scars from her quote-unquote repeated surgeries. Beyond that, she confides in me that she hasn't been working at all this entire time, but going out to score drugs and get high every single day. And now, she's flat broke. She apologizes for lying and saying over and over that she's a sick addict and just needs help. I get her into AA and NA as soon as she's able to walk, driving her to her daily meetings and holding her hand the entire time. My longtime boyfriend and her oldest friend move in with us a short while later to help with the bills. That's when it all goes from bad to unbearable. Evan goes to visit her mom one night and disappears for a week, returning very clearly high and claiming to be sober. She then starts going on many trips to visit friends in other states and is rarely home. When she is home, she babbles endlessly about how great sobriety is, and how she's finally healing, while clearly nodding out on opiates. I end up finding something suspicious on her computer, and she openly admits to me that she's been working as a call girl, bringing customers to our house. I tell her this has to stop, and she claims she already has. Around this time, she becomes very physically ill. Finally, I get a phone call from her after another absence. She's hysterical. She's, get this, 6 months pregnant. She didn't know because she was so high. The baby was severely malformed and there was no way of carrying it to term. I tried comforting her, thinking that this trauma outweighed all the weird behaviors she's exhibited. She had the procedure and afterwards disappeared for almost a month. I thought at one point she was dead until she texted me asking if her cat was okay. When she returned, she proceeded to start eating all of our food, using all of our toiletries, sleeping on the couch, and smoking inside the house, which was not okay with us at all. She was very clearly on drugs again. At first, we tried to be nice about it, but she lied and lied, even going so far to say her room was haunted and the ghost made her sleep upstairs. Finally, my boyfriend snaps and yells at her. She calls the cops and claims he assaulted her. They didn't believe her, but the other roommate did. Then one night when I'm at home, she uses pity and sweet talking to convince my boyfriend that we should all be friends again. I told him it was a lie, and he didn't believe me. When I get home from work that same night, my room is trashed. I asked if he did it, and of course, he claimed he didn't. She'd been in there looking for cash or drugs, which I don't do. When I asked her about it, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It was a ghost." After that, she started sending me insane emails, claiming that I'd been her best friend and betrayed her, accusing her of heinous crimes, and even convincing her that she was a drug addict as a form of a sick psychological torture. The emails get increasingly intense, becoming 10 to 20 pages about how she didn't feel safe in her own home, and how I was the embodiment of pure evil, and that my only purpose in life was to torment her. In these emails, she claimed that she used drugs on rare occasion, and that I'd made everything about her problems up, and that I'd been verbally abusive about her abortion, and that we had repeatedly physically assaulted her. We were genuinely afraid for our safety, especially after the police showed up one day and took her in for a mysterious psychiatric hold. We never found out why she was carried out of the house, barefoot and handcuffed by 4 LAPD officers. After that, we just tried to avoid her, but she got that other roommate involved again. She went as far as to claim that she had pneumonia from the stress of living with us and our constant abuse. The emails continued to escalate. At one point, she said that I had been a sister to her, until the evil spirit in me had forced me to abuse her. This was when I realized that her definition of abuse was a bit skewed, and all her stories about her childhood, exes, old roommates, and even Juliana had been complete fabrications. Of course, she didn't have scars from the surgeries. Everything she said was a lie, just to garner sympathy so she could take advantage of people. Now, I realized this, of course, finally, and that she was completely mad. We found a new house, and the night before moving out, I hacked into her email. Come to find out, she had been telling our landlord that we were heinous criminals, telling her parents that she had been fired from a job because of me and needed money. All kinds of lies. Also, we came to find out that the guy who gotten her pregnant didn't mysteriously disappear. He ran away because they slept together once and she started stalking him. Obviously, everything she had ever said was a creepy little lie. After moving out, the harassing emails and texts continued to the point that I have her blocked on both and seriously consider getting a restraining order. This was 2 years ago. Last month, we found out this girl who had claimed to have never been a drug addict, and then I made all of it up and died of an OD. She was evil. This wasn't a situation where nobody tried to help a sick person. Everyone around her tried to help her, and she manipulated and used every single one of them. I don't feel sad that she's gone. In fact, I still want to punch her in the face. TLDR, my roommate decided to be a drug-addicted, lying, stealing sociopathic prostitute who semi-stalked me via email and text. Okay, so I've posted this on a sub before, and I was just thinking about creepy encounters I had. And it struck me that this one probably qualifies as kind of creepy. Hopefully I'm right. This happened about a year ago now. College student, and I was basically forced to move out on my own, which I didn't mind. That meant finding a new roommate, which can be daunting and a scary experience. I've had a few weird encounters, but I think this one takes the cake. I posted on Craigslist looking for a bedroom in a shared house or apartment for $300 or less. And on my ad I mentioned, please no phone calls, only text or email. Because I find being on the phone with someone I hadn't had a chance to size up a really uncomfortable situation. Just awkward, I guess. Anyway, I get a call from a dude who clearly didn't read the no calls part. Which I mentioned because this type of phone call was exactly the reason I don't like to talk to strangers on the phone. At first he was just pleasant and normal. Told me he had a room available and relevant information like that. We started to talk about when and where we'd like to meet, and he started going on tangents about random things. A combination of interested and deep conversation, and too awkward to end a call when it starts to get kinda weird. So this call went on for 2 hours. We talked about the meaning of life and all kinds of weird shit. Honestly, this should have been the red flag. And I shouldn't have met with him. And of course, I also should have grown a pair and told him I needed to leave. So, he wants me to meet him at his place and show me the room. I've since learned that you should really insist on meeting in a public place first. I get to his neighborhood, and it was run down on a level that made the ghetto I grew up in look nice. Saggy front porches, hot cracked concrete, sad people with old beat up Lincolns. You get the picture. His house blended right in. The yard was seriously overgrown and the front door didn't work. So I went around the back and just looked at the guy standing in the doorway. Seeing the kitchen behind him was enough to make me realize that I really just wanted to leave. No way in hell. The guy in the doorway was a man with a sort of clown-style afro. He was leaning on a cane on his right side. His eyes looked crazy, and the house smelled musty from 10 feet away. Again, I'm a coward, so instead of trusting my gut, I go inside this house, and I'm polite, thinking, it's okay, it'll be over in 20 minutes, and then I can get the fuck out. I don't know what made me think this man, who had a 2-hour conversation with me on the phone about life and philosophy, would let me get away that easily. He took me up a flight of creaky steps into a small bedroom with no door and a mattress on the floor. I thought, no way in hell would I live with a 40-something-year-old man, and I was a 19 and a female, with no door on my bedroom. But it was a moot point because my mind was made up before I even saw the room. I wouldn't have lived there for free, let alone $200 a month. Things got weird. He tried to hold me hostage with conversation again. I think he was lonely. He talked about how some of his family were millionaires. He might have been delusional. The whole story seemed made up. He told me about an 18-year-old girl that has also checked out the room and tried to fuck him. And told me about how his mom hated white people. He was black and I was white. It sounded like he sympathized with her. Obviously, that made me even more uncomfortable. Eventually, I was able to find a break in the conversation, plucked up the courage to make up an excuse and leave. I was never so happy to leave a place in my life. I don't know that he was necessarily a rapist or anything like that, but he really gave me the fucking creeps. I really love Craigslist. I'd estimate I've met maybe 300 people for buying and selling stuff. And for the most part, everyone was nice and harmless. However, I did run into 2 creeps who made me rethink meeting strangers alone to sell stuff. FYI, I was in my early 20s at the time, and I'm a female. First guy. It's 2009, I'm staying with my parents for the Christmas holidays in a small town in Florida. Going through my childhood room and cleaning out the closet and find a giant CD holder maybe full of 100 really shitty CDs. Think like Nickelback, Aqua, Chumbawamba, stuff like that. It's the 21st century, so no one uses CDs anymore. I figured I'd try to sell the CDs on Craigslist. I put up a listing. 100 CDs from the late 90s to early mid 2000s. Mix of pop and rock. All for $35 or best offer. Next day I get an email from a guy named John around 2 p.m. He says that he's in town temporarily and he wants the CDs. He says that he can pick them up after dinner around 8 p.m. I email him back my address and number. Tell him to text or call when he's on his way. 8 p.m. comes and goes. Figured I got stood up, which happens kind of often on Craigslist. No big deal. My dad works for a liquor distribution company and would often do demonstrations at nights on restaurants, bars, and would come home at bar closing time. This night, he gets home around 3 a.m. In college and a total night owl. So I'm still up probably eating junk food, surfing the web, and watching horror flicks. I hear a car pull up. I look out the window and see him sitting in his car eating food. He often stops at Taco Bell on his way home. Eats it in his car so my mom doesn't know he's cheating on his diet. Maybe 10 minutes later, my dad comes in and shouts my name. Jen, there's someone here to see you. Can you please tell me why a strange man is showing up at our house at 3 a.m.? Huh? I go downstairs and my dad said there's some guy pulled up in the driveway and asked for me by name. I walk outside with my dad. This guy who's maybe in his mid-30s gets out of his car. He said he's the Craigslist guy who wanted to buy the CDs. My dad goes back in the house, and I tell the guy it's really, really late just to be stopping by, especially without texting first. However, since I'm awake, I go and grab the CDs. He then proceeds to drone on and on about why he's buying them. He says that he's engaged to a woman he loves very much, and all he wants to do is make her happy. He said that last week someone broke into her car and stole all of her CDs. She was really upset. He wanted to make it up to her. He looked on Craigslist and found my listing and was really excited because I had a bunch of the CDs she used to have. Weird thing is, didn't list any of the artists and bands because I was lazy. But I didn't think about it at the time. Anyway, he said he was getting it for her for a Christmas surprise. He said that he was staying with his future in-laws somewhere nearby and that their family barbecue ran really late, which is why he never made it out at 8 p.m. By this point, I've lost interest. I'd say something along the lines of, "That's sweet. Next time, you should probably call or text the Craigslister ahead of showing up. I hand him the CDs, he hands me the cash, and I go back inside. 3 days later, I start getting texts from an unknown number. Hey, I don't know my way around this town. Care to be a tour guide? Could really use a massage. Where can I get a massage in this town? You're Asian. Do you do massages? Would you take $40 an hour for a 1-hour massage? Happy ending? Me, finally. Who the fuck is this? Oh, sorry. I bought the CDs from you the other day. Do you squirt? I didn't respond, obviously. Show my friends that night and we laugh it off. Then the next day, I get more texts. I still have your address. I'm at the Bank of America near your neighborhood. Just got the $40, babe. Only 3 minutes away. Are you home? You fucking cunt. Stop ignoring me. I'm almost there. I immediately ran downstairs to tell my dad and mom. It was nighttime, so we shut off all the lights outside my house and inside the house. My mom, little brother, and I went in my parents' room in the back of the house. My dad hid behind the curtains of the front bay window with a shovel in his hand. A few minutes later, we heard him run down the front hallway, fling the front door open, and run outside. We heard some faint shouting, so we all walked out of the bedroom, and by that time my dad came back in with his shovel. His face was red and his hair was all disheveled. Apparently the guy came driving down our street really slowly. My dad recognized the car and went running outside with the shovel, yelling obscenities at him. The guy peeled off and never came back or texted me again. Second guy. I was moving from Florida to DC. I was going to load up my car as much as I could with stuff. However, I lived on the 3rd floor, plus a bit of my walk from my assigned parking spot, so I figured I could use some help. Posted an ad on Craigslist. Said I was looking for someone to help me load some heavy items like a desk, a TV, etc. into my car. Less than an hour's worth of work, and I'd pay $40 or whatever. Gave the first responder my number and address, and he shows up. He was probably 5'8" and 350 pounds of pure fat. The sweat and smell coming off this guy in the Florida heat was pretty nauseating. But I didn't really care as long as he got the job done. While he was carting heavy stuff, I was loading lighter things. Whenever I'd go upstairs to grab another load, he'd hurry after me so he could walk up the stairs behind me. I had the door propped open, so he didn't have to worry about me needing to unlock the door for him or anything. When he'd follow me up the stairs, he made these weird grunting noises like, But I assumed it was because he was out of shape. Eventually, everything's loaded properly, save for some sweat smears on my stuff. I pay him and he drives off. I go back into my place to finish loading and cleaning. I go out maybe 45 minutes later to put another load into my car. I see his truck is back, parked across the street from mine. He's sitting in the driver's seat just looking at me. When he sees me notice him, he looks away. I walk over to his window and knock. He rolls it down, and I ask if he needs any help or if he was lost. I was really confused as to why he'd come back, and I knew he didn't live near me. He doesn't say anything, just rolled his window back up and drove off. Okay, whatever. Of course, 5 minutes later, my phone starts blowing up. I don't recognize the number, and I don't answer the calls. But the texts start rolling in. I bet you taste salty and sweet. Who is this? What are you up to tonight? I can come back over. I get this sinking feeling that it's the Craigslist guy. He had never called me about the job when I gave him my number, so I didn't know what his number was. I like your pink panties. Then realized he was looking at my dress when I was walking up the stairs. I immediately felt like a total idiot for wearing a dress that day. He then started dialing my number over and over again. Didn't know how to block the number through Sprint, so I had to just turn my phone off. Later, I was with my guy friend grabbing a bite. Turned my phone back on. Got another text from this guy about how he wanted to toss me around like a rag doll and tie me up and make me beg for it. Show the text to my friend and tell him the story. The Craigslist creep then proceeds to start blowing up my phone once more. So my friend answers, and he says he's going to cut his dick off and feed it to his dog if he ever contacts me again. I moved the next day, so I never had to worry about him randomly showing up in his truck again. Since then, I've bought and sold stuff on Craigslist. I always make people meet me at a public place. I also stalk people's email addresses, Google Plus accounts, etc. My name is Tom, and I live in the St. Louis area, and this is a horror story about something that happened to me that almost fucked up my life forever. When I was 21 years old, I broke up with my first ever serious girlfriend, who I'd been together with for about 8 months. Needless to say, I was completely devastated. I fell into a deep depression and began abusing painkillers and Xanax, extremely heavily. Began looking for any type of chick I could find to rebound with. I ended up looking on the personal section of Craigslist, and I found an ad for a girl named Stephanie. I began talking to her, and arranged for her to come pick me up one night, and we had intercourse, and decided to make it a regular thing. She was an older lady, around 35, and kind of a bigger girl, but she had her own apartment, and enough money to keep me loaded on as much drugs and alcohol as I wanted. To be honest, I kinda used this lady to use her as my sugar mama, for lack of a better word. After a while, she grew really attached to me and started wanting a much more serious relationship. Eventually, she started dropping hints about wanting to get married. She said she wanted to do this to help me out, so she could get me on her insurance, so I could help for my drug and alcohol problem, which I refused to consider. One day, we got into a really big argument. She told the police that I'd been abusing her and got a temporary restraining order on me. A week after she did this, she called me crying her eyes out, saying, "Please forgive me, I love you," and all this other stuff. Said she wanted to come pick me up and buy me some dope and alcohol to get me something to eat, and being the addict that I am, of course I accepted. From the moment she picked me up, I noticed that she was acting kind of odd. She was usually really talkative and was always on my ass about wanting to talk to me about this and that. This day, she was oddly quiet. Got back to her apartment after I walked in. She immediately pushed me onto the couch, pulled my pants down, and then climbed on top of me, all while beginning to ride me. Then got angry when I didn't inject her with my baby juice. I'd been getting bad vibes off of her the whole night, so after this happened, I immediately asked her for a ride back home, which she quickly agreed to do. After dropping me off at my house, I went inside and sat down with my sister and watched some SpongeBob. 10 minutes after I was home, I got a call on the phone. Picked up the phone, and to my surprise, a lady on the other end said this is the St. Louis County Police Department. "I'm gonna need you to come outside to talk." I ran down the stairs and hid my weed and pills, and then walked outside to figure out what the hell was going on. When I walked outside, there was about 7 different cops on my porch, and they were all pointing tasers and guns at me. One of them hit me in the back of my leg with a nightstick, put me on the ground, and handcuffed me. Cops then talked to my mom and got permission to go inside the house, where they took a drug dog and began doing a thorough search of my room and my basement area. None of the cops on the scene would tell me what was going on whenever I would ask a question. I asked why they were there, and they told me that I would have to talk to a detective at the station. When I got to the police station, I had a bombshell dropped on me. Apparently, this lady had accused me of kidnapping her and raping her. She told the police that she had come by my house to return some of my stuff, because we had just broken up, and that I came out and held a knife to her throat, and forced my way into her vehicle, took her back to her apartment, and raped her repeatedly. Thankfully, I had remembered that we'd made a couple stops on the way to her apartment. She had gone inside of a gas station to get a couple of packs of cigarettes with me, so there was no way that I could have kidnapped her. The police still swabbed my dick for DNA, and they also took my clothes for evidence, and I was forced to spend the night in St. Louis County Jail wearing nothing but hospital scrubs. Thankfully, I was released the next morning, but the whole ordeal was far from over. This lady began constantly stalking me. She would call me every night at odd times from blocked numbers, neither crying into the phone or just begging to talk to me. I also began seeing her vehicle quite a lot in the neighborhood, even though she lives nowhere near me. I called the police about this a couple of times, but they didn't really seem to care. They told me that I need to get a restraining order on her in order to make it stop. It wanted nothing to do with the court system though, because I have a criminal record, and I just decided to ignore her and hope that the problem would go away. After a couple of months, she finally did stop bothering me. However, to this day, sometimes I still get calls at 2 or 3 in the morning from those same blocked numbers. And every new girlfriend I get, she messages them on Facebook and tells them how I raped her. Moral of the story, be careful who you meet online. Whether you're a guy or a girl, all it takes is one crazy person to completely ruin your life. About 2 years ago, I moved into a new apartment. The walls were very thin, and because of the fire safety laws in my city, my bedroom had one window, which led to the living room and none with outside access. The window will be important later. It was 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for the master tenant, and one spare, which at the time was rented out by a pretty friendly guy. Well, friendly guy had issues with his work visa and had to move back to Canada last minute, leaving us about 2 weeks to find another roommate. Our quickest and easiest option was Craigslist. Due to my work schedule, I had no part in the selection process, but was content when the new roommate moved in a little later. He seemed a bit off, but friendly. He was a very tall, large guy, but pretty quiet, and not someone I wanted to go out of my way to hang out with, but was okay to be around and be cordial with. About 2 weeks in his move, the master tenant left for Hawaii, leaving him and I alone in the apartment for the long duration of his stay. For the first few days, things are normal. All of a sudden, about 4 days into the trip, I'm woken up about 8 a.m. to a frantic knocking at my door. Roommate, we'll call him Kyle, is standing up there when I opened up, looking frazzled. He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "So you want to tell me what went on last night?" To which I'm shocked and confused because I had come home from work about 9 p.m. and immediately showered and went to bed. I explained this to him. He tells me that he heard screaming and arguing with someone in my room, and that he saw me in the side alley out the window, arguing with our landlord, whom I've never even seen at that point, and that he heard people coming in and out of our house. I tell him no way, none of that ever happened. After staring at me for a little while longer, he leaves and doesn't bring it up again. The next morning, I wake up to the same thing. This time, he said he saw me arguing with my boyfriend. I was single at the time, and had seen me talking with our other roommate, who's in Hawaii, asking me for the badge number of the officer I'd spoken to, since he had apparently seen me talking to a bunch of police as well. This time, I get angry, and more or less tell him to cut this shit out, because I'm not doing anything, and I don't know what he's talking about. He gets a weird look on his face and says, "I think I had a seizure in my sleep. Next time it happens, call an ambulance." And leaves for a bit, only to start knocking about an hour later. When I open up, Kyle repeats the exact same story, verbatim. This happens once more before I tell him to leave me the fuck alone, and I leave for work. I go to work as normal, but I am reluctant to return that night. But I'm too tired to switch to an alternate location. Big mistake. About 1 a.m., I wake up to slamming doors. Kyle is pacing back and forth between his bedroom, the living room, and out the front door, walking in and out of each room, turning the lights on and off, mumbling angrily and slamming the doors. I can see his figure pacing back and forth through the frosted window in my room that leads to the living room. Since my room is dark, he cannot see inside. Suddenly, he screams, "I can't live like this! Why are you doing this to me?" I think he's on the phone, and I don't respond. A few moments later, he screams my name repeatedly, and I realize he's directing it towards me. I knew I had to get the fuck out of here, so I very quietly creep out of bed and start getting dressed, and packing a bag of clothes for work in the morning. Almost done when he screams, "I hear you!" and charges over to my room, slapping the wall next to my door, but not touching the door itself. I look towards my window and see his shadow lean all the way forward, pressing his ear against the glass. I was fucking terrified and sat completely still, unmoving. He eventually screams my name again and moves away from the window, and I hear him start pacing between rooms again. Now, my shoes are kept on a rack outside my door and not inside my room, so I know that when I leave, I'm gonna need a moment to put them on. I decide to wait until he's pacing himself outside the front door again, at which time I plan to grab my shoes, put them on, and run. As I'm formulating this plan, the pacing stops. He screams, "Do you want to fucking fight about this? Come out right now. We'll fight, I swear to God." I'm very small, a 5-foot girl, and this guy's easily 3 times my size, so I'm definitely not looking to fight, thanks. After a few minutes, he turns off all the lights, and I hear the door to his room open and close, followed by silence. Wait for a moment just to be sure I can't hear any movement, and then decide to take my chance. I took a deep breath, pulled my door open quickly, and step outside to grab my shoes before I look up a second later to see him standing shirtless with just a pair of boxers and a sock on. His arms hung slightly outward in an awkward position. He says in a low, calm voice, "Ma'am, we need to talk." This was a hard no for me. I grab my shoes and run out the door with them in my hand. I run about half a block barefoot before I stop and put them on. When I look back, he is standing in the porch light of our front door, watching me run, but not moving. Luckily, I had a friend who lived 2 blocks away, and I had their spare key, so I let myself in and crashed there for the night. And that's where I stayed for the next week or so while we worked things out with the master tenant. Kyle agreed to move out within a week. He says he doesn't remember anything that happened, or wasn't sure if it was even real or not. But if I said that's what went down, then it must be real. The day Kyle left, he sends me a photo of the house key sitting on the table and says, "I'm out." Nothing else. I took a friend over there with me to scout it out and ensure that he actually has left. When we got there, we discovered that not only had he left a ton of food and furniture, but he'd ripped out all the fire alarms in the ceilings, and had unscrewed and removed the deadbolt from the front door, and then left them lined up neatly in front of the front table. We then realized that my front door can only lock by using a key from the outside, and it had been locked when we arrived, meaning Kyle still had a key. So we called a locksmith immediately. After changing the locks, I was still terrified to stay there alone afterwards, and never went to sleep at night without barricading the doors with chairs and other furniture. To this day, I still fear for his safety, and he obviously psychologically was unstable, but also wonder what could have happened if I hadn't been as lucky as I was. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell to be notified when future episodes come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Instagram, and you can also stalk me on Facebook. All of those links are below. Really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I fully intend on dropping another poll into the community tab here on YouTube right after I upload this, with a couple of more options to get another episode out and see what you guys want to hear for the next one here in a couple of days. I'm gonna make this one quick because I'm hungry and I want to go get some num-nums. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.